Tonight on the Black Channel, an ongoing reminder that economics is warfare and generational wealth is the battlefield. The Black Channel is live. Unapologetic, unadulterated, and absolutely uncompromising. Greetings, brothers and sisters from around the world, and welcome back to the home, the haven, the stronghold, and the everlasting superfortress of intelligent black thought. We are the Black Media, and this is the Black Channel. And I am the Black Authority, and you are listening live to the only historically black college and university of higher education and learning in the cosmos. You are welcome to join us. And join us you shall, because on tonight's program here in our function as the haven of intelligent black thought, and in my function as the anchor man of the new Black Media, it is incumbent on me to make sure that you all are aware of when bellwether moments like this happen. Our immortal ancestor, Dr. John Henry Clark, once said that we as black people are smack in the middle of a world war against the history of black people on this planet. And if they can erase the monuments and hallmarks of your presence, then they can erase you. There has never been a musical talent of the like or the magnitude of Michael Joseph Jackson. There's never been. And there never will be again. Michael was one of a kind. And there have been a number of people now who have made it very clear that they want to erase that. Every time that comes up, every time the subject of this comes up, people go to work to see if they can get rid of it. Because that's how important it is. It is a tremendous importance. You see, we built music. We built music on the planet. We built music in the world. And we built music in the most dominant nation that's ever existed. We built these things, even though we were given the least and had everything taken from us, and yet we still were able to do that. And they have been working ever since to see how can we seize control back away from you, because that is everything. That is what endures. That's what continues, and that's what endures. These are art forms that are your cultural legacy. They are the things that get passed down long after the people are gone. And if you can, by some means, grab these things and take them, if you can do that, then now you can rewrite it in your image. And what they have worked at the entire time is to take these things from us and then hand it to one of their children and then tell you that they're the ones who created it and they're the ones who built it. That's what they tell you. When you watch this happen throughout the centuries now, every time we create something, they move in, and then literally as soon as the first one comes in, he is the colonizer. And then you'll never hear from yourself again. Next thing you know, it belongs to them. And then they're telling you that your children don't belong here, is what they tell you. They stole rock and roll colonized it, and then handed it over to a number of carpet-bagging interlopers until finally they had settled upon the perfect manufactured being, Elvis Aaron Presley, a platinum blonde who, because he had idolized Hollywood stars with dark hair, when they got to him, he was a white boy who wasn't big on black folk to begin with. And again, they don't have to be. There's something here to steal and something here to take. Therefore, you don't have to be big on them at all. And they got together and they said, we're going to fabricate someone here because as far as white society is concerned, why, he's the little white boy who sings black. Of course, it was absolutely laughable. You could not look at Chuck Berry. You could not look at the Four Tops. You could not look at Little Richard and in any way think that Elvis Presley was anything even remotely close to them. But for a society that wanted to have access to what we built, they wanted to have monetary access to it, but not have to accept the social consequences. They constructed this artificial being known as Elvis Presley. Someone in the chat room said the king of appropriation. Someone said it was the king of appropriation. And you're absolutely right. And you're absolutely right. But that was a jack move. That they saw that this thing called rock and roll was taking over the world, taking it by storm. It was going to be the dominant music form. And anything that dominates, they have to control it. They have to control it. That's the thing I want you to understand. So we already did this. We already did this. So now they've come back again because once they colonized rock and roll, unfortunately, we did something we should never have done. We allowed ourselves to be bullied and moved off of what we had. And we created something new that overtook rock and roll. They never thought that could happen, and yet it did. But they've never forgotten. They've never forgotten because Elvis Presley was supposed to be a permanent fixture. He was supposed to be a permanent monument. Those of us who are old enough, you remember Graceland. Why, this was going to be like Disneyland. Do you see how that happens? How they parlay their intellectual properties and then cultivate them into something beyond just whatever was originally created. Walt Disney made cartoons, and then the Walt Disney Company today is not primarily a cartoon company. It is primarily a real estate and theme park company. When you take a look at their balance sheets, that's what the Walt Disney Company is today. Its biggest moneymaker is not movies nor cartoons. That's where they started. Their big moneymaker is their theme parks. What they call on their balance sheets, experiences. So that, their cruise ships, stuff that have absolutely nothing to do with cartoon characters. Do you understand that? So when you see Elvis Presley and then you see Graceland, then you see Dolly Parton and you see Dollywood, I can actually go down the list, people. I can actually go down the list. These are, every time that something hits, they want to institutionalize it and turn it into an institution. And they figured they were all home free, and then Elvis Presley dies. But even if he hadn't died, Michael was going to rise and the inevitable was going to occur regardless. So within less than a decade, Michael Joseph Jackson rises to prominence. And people who had said they had to go from saying Elvis Presley, the highest selling music artist of all time, to immediately having to scratch that out and put the name of Michael Jackson, who did things that Elvis Presley never could have dreamed of accomplishing. He did not break records. He absolutely shattered them into splinters. There was music before Michael Jackson and then music after Michael Jackson, and that's just what it's gonna be. Just when you thought that we were done redefining things, here he came along and redefined it again. And just that quickly, that started a whole renaissance. Because as you all remember, MTV did not want to play black artists. Michael Jackson broke that down. Michael Jackson broke it down. Next thing you know, the floodgates were open. You don't get Yo MTV Raps without Michael Jackson. I want you to understand that. You don't get Yo MTV Raps without Michael Jackson, because without Michael Jackson, you weren't going to have any black folk there, period. When Michael came through, it opened doors for a whole bunch of other folk and doors for a whole bunch of other genres. And as soon as that happened, they went to work to go to war against Michael Jackson's image. You see, they couldn't attack his talent, so they went to war against his image. Because they could not assault or assail his talent. His talent was invulnerable. So they went to war against his image. Ultimately, that would fail also, but many of us were watching what was going on. And then as time went on, we realized what was really happening there, that this was another battlefront of an ongoing war against us and our people and our cultural legacy and generational wealth. That was the point. And then Michael Jackson, and I'm sure he was aware of it at the time, but Michael Jackson commits a cardinal sin. He was daring. He was raised by an iconic father. And that family was not going to be second fiddle to anyone. He taught his sons and his daughters that they were not second to anybody, and they lived that. They lived that. And just as soon as his son was on top, they did exactly what you're supposed to do. Michael didn't just say, I am a singer. He said, I am in the business. And he got to work purchasing things. Now I'm going to bring this to you here from Billboard.com back in 2016. For those of you who did not know, you're unaware, or maybe you are aware, let's go ahead and get this settled for you here. The timeline of when Michael Jackson purchased, everyone talks about the Beatles catalog, but it was actually more than that. It was actually more than that. So let me take this as an opportunity to go ahead and get this together for you all so that you can update your files. Michael Jackson was famously profligate spender. Really, who in the business isn't? Renowned in his latter years for endless shopping sprees that nearly broke the bank. As a result, at the time of his death in 2009, very clear that was a well overstated. It said at the time of his death in 2009, the self-proclaimed king of pop was $500 million in the hole. Grossly overstated, but anyway. Before overdosing at 50, rumors reportedly swirled that Jackson was on the verge of a forced sale of one of his prized and most valuable assets, his 50% stake in the Sony ATV catalog. So you see, these folks here are Mr. Kaufman. They are still salty. All those years later, still salty and still angry. Every time they turn around, we're going to smear his name. Michael Jackson was never in danger of going bankrupt. Was never happening. But just understand, they are holding such a tremendous ethnic grudge, a tremendous racial grudge, that every time you bring him up, even when you have to give him his flowers, even when you got to give him his trophy, even when you got to give him his props, first we're going to smear you as much as we can. You see the title up here, a timeline of Michael Jackson's best bet. His best bet was himself, not a catalog, Mr. Kaufman. Don't be a hater all your life, though it's probably too late. It goes on to say here, that deal finally closed this week, and the sale price is proof that Jackson's 1985 purchase of half of the music publishing company, whose holdings include iconic songs by The Beatles and Bob Dylan. Now, notice the names they named here. The Beatles and Bob Dylan, white folk, was perhaps the shrewdest move of his 40-plus year career. 40 years means starting at 10 years old. Just understand that. By the way, in the chat room, you're correct. The self-proclaimed king of pop. Self-proclaimed? Excuse me? Who said otherwise? So just understand, they are angry as hell. They don't talk this way about Eminem or Taylor Swift or anybody else. They never put the word self-proclaimed in front of them. But if you're black, it's never actually settled. It's never actually a fact. Everything is alleged. They claim. Self-proclaimed, they say. Aaliyah was a rising star. How many times you got to go platinum before you're a star? So just understand, if you want to know why we talk about reparations, it's because of things like this. You talk about institutional racism, things like this, when you can run this on a routine basis. Yeah, that's institutionalized. Now, here's the timeline of it. A look back at the history of Jackson and the Sony ATV catalog. 1957, that's right. The music publishing company is founded as a division of Associated Television, that's the ATV part, whose owner, Sir Lew Grade, was a renowned British media mogul in the 50s and 60s. 1969, 12 years later, Beatles John Lennon and Paul McCartney fail in their bid to gain control of their publishing after their publishing company, Northern Songs, is sold to Grade. So in 1969, Paul McCartney and John Lennon wanted to buy their publishing, but their publishing company had been sold to ATV, and they failed to be able to get the money together to do that. 13 years later, Michael Jackson, now take a look at this. Michael Jackson learns about the importance and lucrative nature of song publishing from soon-to-be former friend and musical companion Paul McCartney. Let's be very, very clear. Michael Jackson's father was in the music business. Michael Jackson's daddy knew all of this. So anybody who sits up here and tries to put the credit for this at the feet of Paul McCartney as if Michael Jackson was just some ignorant bumpkin from the Midwest who was completely ignorant about how things ran and how things worked. How the hell you gonna sit up here and run over Joe Jackson like that? This is what I'm talking about. They have to immediately rewrite history here. There may have been a conversation between Michael Jackson and Paul McCartney, but let's be very clear. That's a musical family. They understood the musical business. You couldn't make Michael Jackson. His father had to make him. There wasn't white folk who made him. His father had to make him. Just like Beyonce's father had to learn the music business to create his daughter as the premier musical act of our time. But he was just a repeat of what Michael's father had done. So take a look at this here. Every time you turn around, if you do have to give him credit, here's a white person you have to thank. No, you don't. No, you don't. Everybody in here knows Michael Jackson's father was in the music business with other people. And yet when they tell his story, Paul McCartney told him about publishing. As if Michael Jackson was just some rapper out here making it rain in the club and he didn't get serious about business until he talked to Paul McCartney. In time, all after the Jackson 5, all after Off the Wall, and he didn't know anything until he talked to Paul McCartney. Now, you all know this is phony and fraudulent. He may have talked to Paul McCartney about that particular catalog, but he didn't need Paul McCartney or anybody else to educate him about the importance of publishing. He didn't need that. But they're going to sit here and lie anyway, which is why I'm clearing this up and clarifying it for you. If I'm telling the truth here tonight, I want you all to give me the fire emoji in the chat room and hit the likes button for me. There's over 2,700 people in here live tonight. And if we get our numbers up a little bit more here, we might do something a little bit special later on. It depends. Or if they don't, we can cut it off early. That can happen too. But if you agree with what we're hearing here tonight, if I'm telling the truth about that, give me the fire emoji in the chat room and hit the likes button for me. Now it says he talked to Paul McCartney during their London sessions for the song Say, Say, Say. 1985, 3 years later, informed by attorney John Branca, who would later be part of the brain trust handling his estate, that the 4,000-song ATV catalog was available, Jackson paid a then unheard of price of $47.5 million for the rights to the priceless Lennon-McCartney catalog, priceless my ass, as well as songs by Bruce Springsteen, Cher, Elvis, Hank Williams, Little Richard, and the Rolling Stones. Now, if Michael Jackson was wasteful with money, how the hell is it at the very beginning of his career, he could get his hands on $47 million if he was just this wasteful spender? So, Mr. Kaufman, your lies are running into themselves. You're contradicting yourself in the middle of your own damn propaganda piece, sir. You should just stick to the facts. But he's explaining to you here, the writer of this article at Billboard is explaining why he's so bitter and angry. This black man was able to sidestep Paul McCartney, outmaneuver Paul McCartney, and he had been in the business fewer years than Paul McCartney. Understand that. Michael Jackson had been in the business fewer years, and yet he had more success and more money. The so-called priceless Beatles catalog. Well, Michael Jackson had been in the business far fewer years than Paul McCartney, and yet had dominated him. So yeah, y'all real sore about this. You're very angry about it, and still to this day very bitter because you can't reverse the facts. So you're not going to say that fact, but I will. And it hurts you to this day that, yeah, if we ever had a fair shake, if the playing field were ever level, we would blow by you like a tornado past a daffodil. And you're angry about it to this day. It goes on to say here, 1988, CBS sells its recording division to the Sony Corporation for $2 billion in cash. The purchase of the world's then most popular record company, home to Columbia, Epic, and Portrait Records, included a deep roster of acts, including MJ, Dylan, Springsteen. Now you see this right here? MJ? Who is MJ? Does anybody know a MJ? Who is MJ? Who is the MJ that Mr. Kaufman is referring to here? Who's the MJ you're talking about? Was there some other deep roster of acts? MJ, who is MJ? Because we've been talking about Michael Jackson up to this point. I'm trying to figure out, is there another person who called themselves, was there somebody named MJ in the 80s we all didn't know of who was relevant enough to mention next to Bob Dylan and Bruce Springsteen? So the writer of this article, his hatred, now he works for Billboard now. He works for Billboard. He gets paid by Billboard. They're supposed to be gatekeeping and guarding the history of the music. He's getting paid by Billboard, and yet he's sitting up here using this as an opportunity to smear Michael Jackson for unprovoked reasons, although we understand his motive for doing so. They have been saying Michael Jackson all this time, and yet when you mention him next to all these other folks, it's acts including MJ. MJ? See, this is the reason why when black folks go somewhere, sometimes you got to raise your voice or get up in folks' faces when they do uncivil things like this. When folks do uncivil things like this, like referring to you outside of your name and verbally disrespecting you and socially disrespecting you, that's why black folk have a tendency to get up in folks' faces and let them know, okay, look here, partner, not gonna be another one of those. I didn't come here disrespecting you. You will not disrespect us. Now, this article was written back in 2016. So that tells you how hateful they've been the whole time. But of course, he's angry because Michael surpassed all these people, and it chokes him, it strangles him to have to mention him next to all these folk, knowing that they are all his subordinates. It goes on to say that the company was renamed Sony Music Entertainment in 1991. Now, let me stop for a moment here and show you all the parallels. You have a white-owned company, ATV, Associated Television. Then you have another white-owned company, Columbia Broadcasting System. They sell theirs to an Asian company, Sony. So I want you to understand there's been a coalition, all right? It just never included us. And all of these entities have had us in the crosshairs ever since. They all work together and historically have worked together against us. 1995, Sony and Jackson form Sony ATV Music Publishing after Jackson sells a 50% stake of ATV to Sony for around $100 million. So much for Michael being in a cash crunch. 2002, Sony ATV buys country music publisher Acuff Rose for $157 million, scooping up the rights to 55,000 country songs by the likes of Hank Williams, Roy Orbison, Boudleaux Bryant, Marty Robbins, and the Everly Brothers. 2006, now this guy is at it again. Under a crushing debt load in excess of $270 million, Jackson agrees to give Sony an option to buy half of his stake in Sony ATV for around $250 million. Now, did you hear what they just said here? It gives Sony an option to buy. Did you get that? An option to buy. So the writer of this article is so desperate to try to spin this win as a loss. Jackson was under a crushing debt load. He gave them an option to buy. So the writer of this article is just so desperate to turn this into a loss, you can't say that he sold it to him then. You can't say that. You can't say that he sold it to them. He was in a bunch of debt. So he agreed to give them an option to buy. Okay, but he didn't give them anything other than an option to buy. That was all he gave them. He didn't give them anything else. So when they talk about us, just understand they skew the history, they slant the history, they misrepresent the history deliberately so. So if you're not actually reading what they're saying here and understanding, well, they gave an option. He didn't sell anything. So he says this first sentence to make you think Michael's selling. He needs $270 million and he gave them the option to buy for around $250 million. So that, oh, you're thinking he sold. He didn't do anything yet. Nothing yet. 2006. Keep that date in mind. Let's see when things actually go down. Because apparently he can't handle the so-called $270 million in debt. Michael couldn't handle that, right? Okay, keep this in mind. In 2006, if he needed that $270 million, why didn't he just go ahead and cash out and get the $270 million? Keep in mind the date, 2006. Let's see how long he can carry that, quote, crushing debt. 2007, the next year, Sony ATV acquires one of the crown jewels of publishing catalogs with his purchase of the songs of Jerry Lieber and Mike Stoller. The deal brings into the fold such iconic songs as Jailhouse Rock, Hound Dog, On Broadway, and There Goes My Baby. 2008, Sony ATV purchases the international administration rights to famous music for $370 million from the Universal Music Group. Among the hits in the 125,000 song catalog are songs by Eminem, Shakira, Pink, and Beck. 2009, Jackson dies on June 25th, 2009 at age 50, leaving behind 3 young children and an estate in dire financial straits. It's 3 years later. The writer of this article, y'all got to understand how white supremacists work. The writer of this article here, he's so desperate and so angry and so bitter that allegedly this was Michael Jackson owes so much that it's 3 years later and he didn't have to do anything about it. Why? Because it wasn't a problem. But you wish it were. So they're just hate writing about him. They just wish it was a problem. 3 years later, the man dies and it wasn't a problem. However, here's where the problems start. His longtime attorney, John Branca, and industry music veteran John McClain take control of the estate and begin an ambitious plan to pull the star's assets into the black. No, it's an ambitious plan to sell off everything. 2012. Now, do you get this, everyone? 2006 to 2012. What about that $270 million? That was a crushing debt, by the way. So far, ain't heard nothing else about it. The writer of this article is so hateful. So far, ain't heard nothing. 6 years later, a group led by Sony ATV and the Jackson Estate, among others, closed a $2.2 billion deal for the purchase of EMI Music. Now, do you all get this? A group led by Sony ATV and the Jackson Estate. So obviously, Michael wasn't in that much damn debt because he was able to posthumously go out and go purchase other things. But you'd never know this by listening to the prejudiced writer of this article. They closed a $2 billion deal for the purchase of EMI Music. Keep that number in mind, $2 billion. Publishing. EMI's assets count more than 1.3 million songs, including 251 Beatles compositions, as well as songs by The Police, Justin Bieber, One Direction, and The Beach Boys. 2015. Almost a decade later. Almost a decade after the writer claims that he was under crushing debt, the man's debt was so not crushing that it's a decade later that Sony has to trigger the buy-sell process with the Jackson Estate that allows it to buy out MJ's stake in 750,000 songs Sony ATV catalog, which now includes hits by everyone from Marvin Gaye, now they're mentioning black folk, Marvin Gaye to Taylor Swift, A$AP Rocky, Fall Out Boy, Adele, and Lady Gaga. 2016, a decade later, 10 years after the writer of this article alleges that he was under crushing debt. The debt was so crushing, nothing was done until a decade later. Sony announces plans to complete its acquisition of the estate's 50% of Sony ATV for $750 million. A definitive agreement is expected by March 31st, with deal closure to come in late 2016 or early 2017, pending regulatory approval. We just marched you through the process of Michael Jackson being a musical act to Michael Jackson being a musical mogul. Take a look at that number, $750 million. That's damn near half what they paid. It's a third of what they paid for EMI Publishing. And that was just for EMI Publishing. Now, all these years later, they want to buy half of his catalog, not thousands of songs, just his songs. $600 million. That puts this at well over $1 billion that Sony has given Michael Jackson and his estate. Over $1 billion. Over $1 billion. And not done yet because they've only got half of it, which means the second half is probably going to cost them even more. And the writer of the article, salty and angry as hell at Michael Jackson from beyond the grave. Michael is winning from beyond the grave. I say winning in that, well, certainly it didn't go bad, but I wanted you all to understand how generational wealth is weaponized against us. That's the part I want you to understand, which is why I was bringing you to, by the way, did you see the entities who are working together on this? That's the thing I wanted you to see. Sony is a company of generational wealth. Columbia Broadcasting System is a company of generational wealth. And they went to, these are all companies that were started by individuals, but they, over the course of the century, they built themselves up into what they were then and are today. And they went to work to target us. Michael Jackson bought into their catalog 40 years ago, and then 40 years later, they came back around because they were never going to let this go. You see, people might be born and people might die, but corporations theoretically are eternal and their interests are, and they had made up their minds now, he cannot be allowed to keep that. We're going to keep circling at him and keep coming back. And if he will not sell, we will come after his heirs. And if they do not sell, we will come after their heirs. Well, Jason, how can you do that? Well, remember, they've been trying to apply the pressure all this time. They've called Michael Jackson a pedophile. They put out hit pieces, absolutely unscrupulous, phony, so-called documentaries slandering and smearing him in order to attempt to devalue his catalog, which is what I've warned you all about all this time. If you're black and you own something valuable that they want, if they can't devalue the asset, then they will attack the person who owns the asset and attempt to devalue you. And then when they've tanked the value of what you own, they're then going to try to step in and buy it for a song. And then as soon as they own it, and as soon as the ownership shifts from you to them, then all their media apparatus and media mouthpieces and all the hit pieces and all of the propaganda pieces are going to go away. And then the very next day, they're going to talk about how great your music is and how everybody needs to listen to it and how this is historical and everything's fine. Just understand, just as soon as they start getting their hands on Michael's catalog, now you can't find anybody today to say anything negative about Michael. Well, yeah, because the word came down from the white and Asian owners. Hey, y'all back up off of that. We got what we came for. They're telling them, okay, you can go ahead and stop smearing it. We need to get this value back up. Now that we got what we want, we're going to get that value back up. Mark my words. I've said this for years now. Mark my words. R. Kelly will meet the same fate. As soon as R. Kelly is dead, or as soon as his catalog is most likely acquired by a white man, as soon as they get their hands on it, you ain't going to hear another bad word about R. Kelly. That's going to be the end of that. They're going to give R. Kelly the Roman Polanski treatment. They're going to call him a visionary. They are going to call him special. They're going to call him troubled. They're going to call him troubled. They're going to call him troubled or controversial. But they're not going to mention Aaliyah's name. They're not going to mention Aaliyah's name because her family got their hooks into that and they're running that like a business. So we need to trash Aaliyah's name too. We got to bury Aaliyah. Now you can't really trash her, but we're going to bury Aaliyah because her family has too much control of her catalog. So yeah, we got to bury Aaliyah. That's how the game goes there. That's how the game goes there. Generational wealth is hard to attain when you are the target of racial warfare. It is hard to attain when that occurs. I want to put this into perspective for you all here. I want to put this in perspective. The rapper Nelly, as you all remember, sold his catalog for somewhere they think about $50 million. He sold his catalog. The rapper Future, he sold his catalog. Neither one of them sold it for nearly as much as Michael Jackson's going to get. They sold their catalogs. If somebody's willing to pay Nelly $50 million, and if they're willing to give Future $75 or $100 million, depending on which figure you believe, that means they think those catalogs are worth far more than that. That's my point. They think those catalogs are worth far more than that. My question is, by the way, what happens to the children? What happens to the kids? He can get with Ashanti if he wants to. If you've already sold that, now you got money. Now what? I'm not just talking about the money. I'm talking about your cultural legacy. People, do you understand that if your catalogs and your publishing belong to other people, then your musical legacy belongs to them too? How do you tell the story, the definitive story of Michael Jackson's music career, if you are prohibited from using Michael Jackson's music? We've all watched these so-called documentaries and so-called autobiography movies trying to tell stories about these artists and can't get the music cleared. How do you tell the story of a musical artist and you are prohibited from touching that musical artist's work? That's what I'm asking. How do you do that? And who's going to control this now? I'm a musician, so I'm painfully aware of these things and painfully aware of how it works. And I'm thinking about the historical context of it. Right now, today, you've had people be able to sample music. But you've got a couple of white men who are going around and buying up all these music catalogs. You can look them up on YouTube and on Google. And just understand that those men will be able to control who can sample it and who can't. They'll be able to control who can sample it and who can't. I want you to think about that for a few moments. They can control who uses it and who doesn't. So in other words, they now have the ability to silence your musical legacy if they want to. They've got the rights to the music. They can now silence you. Now, you just assume that they will put you on a megaphone because they, quote unquote, want to get a return on their investment. But on the other hand, if they have so much autocratic control, they've got so much absolute control, they can decide who is heard and who isn't. Now, imagine, I want you to understand because this is the way this can work. Now, imagine they've got control of Nelly's catalog, so Country Grammar. They got control of Future's. If they got control of, let's just say, Michael Jackson's, if they have control to say who can and who can't. So let me get this straight. Your children, we literally have a future now where your children, your black children will be told that they can't sample Michael's music. If they try to sample it, they're going to tell them, man, you can't use it. But then they'll tell Eminem and Bad Bobby that they can. I want you to understand this is actually literally something that can happen now. That when they take control of these catalogs, they take control of this publishing, there's literally a situation where they can have the white so-called rappers come in the room and they'll be given permission to sample the music. And then they will tell your black children, now you can't, you got away. We can't clear that sample right now. No reason given, no explanation given. So our icons could be used to enhance these other people's wealth. I want you to understand when that kind of thing happens, you're going to feel that. You're going to feel that. When that kind of thing occurs, when you see them sitting up here granting permission to some folk and denying permission to ours, you'll feel that. That's what I mean by cultural conquest. That's what I mean by erasing you from history. That the music will exist, but it'll be under their dominance. And if it's under their dominance, they're only going to use it for their benefit. I just gave you an example of how that can be done. I started the Black Channel as a place where we could discuss socioeconomics because that's the answer. They hate you because you are black, but they're able to victimize you because you're poor. And that is why the target must always be to ensure that you remain poor and impoverished. If you do start getting some money together, they've immediately got to go to work attacking it. And if you all think right now, go back and think to the 80s. How many of the icons that we had from the 80s who were the biggest things in media, biggest things in entertainment, how many of them are viable today? How many of them have mogul status today? I submit to you, none that I can think of. Bill Cosby, done. Michael Jackson, done. Motown music, done. Anybody who we considered to be icons in the 80s, Richard Pryor, done. Hell, they don't even mention Richard anymore. Since they wanted to try to elevate the white comics, they've been burying Richard, remember? And they buried Red Fox too. Now that they want to elevate the white comedians and a new generation of privileged white comedians, now they've gone to work burying the black ones. So you think about all the folk who were running the game back in the 80s. They've buried them, silenced them, everything else. Eddie Murphy has been retired, man. Come on now, no shade, but Eddie is retired. Yeah. Beverly Hills Cop 4, Netflix. Yeah. Eddie Murphy is retired. Come on now, I meant what I said. I was thinking about Eddie too. Yeah, Eddie's retired, man. Eddie's retired. Whitney Houston gone, but then again, she didn't reach mogul status. Prince was a very talented songwriter, musician, everything else. He never reached Michael's level. Not dissing, I'm just saying he never reached Michael's level. And Prince didn't want to do business with other people. Now, there's the big difference. You can't compare Prince to Michael Jackson because Prince didn't really want to do business with other people. Prince wanted to be an artist. Prince wanted to be a musician. Prince didn't want to do business. He just really wanted to focus on the music. He was a musician's musician, and his world centered and orbited around music. Michael was a businessman. So him, Red Fox, Richard Pryor, these were folks who wanted to make moves. That's why the system had to get in their way and stop them. Bill Cosby, these are folks who wanted to make moves. The system jumped in the way real quick and said, okay, we're going to go ahead and shut that down. So I just want you to understand that. I want you to understand how that works. Once they get a hold of it, you call it appropriation, but it's really colonization. And this cultural colonization serves this purpose. And I want you to understand this is our cultural legacy of what we built. But when they get done taking it over, they erase us. And then next thing you know, I want you all to understand something. 40 years. Do you realize that that's not one, but two generations of young people once they reach the age of 18. That's two generations of young people who never saw Motown 25, never saw Michael Jackson at his zenith. And technically speaking, Michael Jackson is, now this is going to hurt a lot of y'all's feelings out there. I know it certainly hurt mine when I had to think about it this way, but it's the damn truth. You have to understand that technically speaking, Michael Jackson's music is really considered to be the oldies. What? But it's true. Hey, for your kids, the kids from the 90s, the 2000s, the 2010s, Michael Jackson's music is the oldie station. I mean, hey, look, folks, come on. It is what it is. But it's true. Michael was new when you were a kid. You ain't a kid no more. You're past middle age. I mean, Michael's music is the oldie station. It's the classics. So if your kids aren't listening to the classics, they won't get that. Now, remember, rap music was built and popularized off of what? Sampling the oldies music. The stuff from folk who weren't alive when we were kids. Their heyday had been right before we had been born. So the 70s and the 60s and the 50s, Dre and the rest of them were sampling that music. From the 70s and the 60s, or in some cases the 50s. James Brown? Come on now. So yeah, that was the oldies for us. Well, guess what? Michael is the oldies for this generation now. But just like we went digging through the crates to go sample music from before our time, and then we made it mega hot, I'm telling you, history is about to repeat itself. But if the bad guys get their way, it will be their children digging through our crates of our music, these new classics, and they will do what we did, only now they've divorced us from it. That'll be the difference. When they get done, they'll have divorced us from it, and people will hear the sample, and a number of folks will recognize it, but it'll be somebody else's song. It'll be someone else's song. Yours will just be a sample spliced into it, but it'll be someone else's. You'll just be a part of it. And they will have a very vested interest in making sure it does that. I want you all to see the lines of connection here. Imagine, if you will, you have these white folk who come in and buy these catalogs off of black people here, either by hook or by crook. They buy them off of us. They have control of them. They get a white musical act, or they put one together or get a white performer, and he's been chosen. Okay, he'll be given permission to sample this song here. They get together with Sony. Sony gives it the push. They give it the publishing. They give it the airplay. Then Sony and their movie corporation puts the song in a movie. Next thing you know, it's all over the damn place. Instant hit. They do this stuff all the time. They do it now. They've been doing it for years. I just wanted to show you a scenario whereby which, take a look at those lines of connection right there, all the way to generating hundreds of millions of dollars. And you can spin that off of just one song. You can spin that off of one. So they made sure that the now white folk who bought the publishing and the catalog, now he gets paid. The artist might get paid. If they're white, they'll make sure he get a little money. Better than the black folk do. Sony and Asia gets paid, and you don't get nothing. All right, we already took care of that for you. You're done. You're done. I also want to introduce one more economic reality to you here. Everyone talks about the statistic about how it is that money in the black community doesn't stay in the community for more than a day. In white society, it'll be there for 2 or 3 weeks. Technically speaking, it doesn't really leave because all the money winds up coming back. But my point here is When we're discussing generational wealth, that is very critical. It's very critical because now if these people own every step along the way, they've co-opted even what you have, that means the money simply never leaves them. It comes in and never leaves out. It may circulate, it's on its way back, but it never leaves out. And we have to have a system and a philosophy where that doesn't occur. We have to have a system and a philosophy of prioritizing it. Because I'm showing you that the war continues. It is not accidental. The war continues. This is not about music. This is about cultural legacy and your children's identity. And you can't sit up here and give your children an identity telling them old stories and old tales, not when we have the ability to document it. It is critical that we be able to control that. I'm holding this up as an example here. I'm holding this up as an example. So that you can see that if they take this that seriously, we need to take this that seriously. There's a reason why in the music business today, in the cultural business today, and the media business today, they take all of these extremes to make sure that they get certain artists and certain people from certain backgrounds. They do this on a regular basis because they're trying to prove something. They go off and they go get some folks to put together some weak whack music and go generate a few songs. And then next thing you know, if you do have something that has a hit of any lasting value, hell, today they don't even get a chance to have their publishing, most of them. Their cultural legacy is gone before they even start. No disrespect for those of you who are not descendants of the slaves in America. But just understand these things that we built, there's a reason why so many of you have been okay making catalogs that don't go anywhere and having no ownership, because this is not your cultural legacy. Rap and hip hop is our cultural legacy. R&B is our cultural legacy. Pop is our cultural legacy. You are just like the white folk. You've only known about it now for the better part of 20 years. It goes back in our bloodlines, decades and centuries we go back with it. This ain't something we just stumbled on to since MTV. This is our cultural legacy from the soil, from the foundation. This is ours. So you see, we don't tell your stories about encountering rap and hip hop only go back to Yo MTV Raps. Ours goes back all the way to the origin because we were there. So that's why you're okay being culture vultured. That's why you're okay with them picking the meat off the bones. You're all right with that because it's not your cultural legacy. It doesn't go back in your family. It's not your roots. And then you wonder why it is that we put the hand up and put up the stop sign and say, hey, you wonder why we do that. Why do you take us so seriously? Why do you take us so seriously? It is just music. It is just music. It is not just music. Just like you don't like it when folks come over there disrespecting what culture you have, we don't allow that here. I don't want folks selling you on the idea that our culture is a jingle or a bauble or a trinket to be passed around and played with. This is integral to your children's identity. You can't pass down who you are if your children don't have a firm grasp on where you've been. Music is a unique aspect of your cultural legacy. It says something, it does something, it transcends words, it directly interfaces with emotion. And you need to be able to explain to your children why it is that this music in particular resonated with you the way that it did, so that you can explain to them why it will resonate with them the way that it will. That when they get older and they grow up, they've got a firm frame of reference of who they are. For everything, not just the dance music, the political music, the romantic music, very, very important. Many people talk about rap music and gangster rap music and, oh, that's so dangerous and this, that, and the other. Let me tell y'all something. The most dangerous music, in my opinion, are these hate songs that folk went around calling love songs, because they have for us over here, they have completely poisoned it. You got a bunch of slow songs that used to be, quote, love songs, and that's not what they are. They're either sex songs or slow songs talking about how much they hate black men. You ain't no good. You's a cheater. You's a liar. Go call Tyrone. So music that goes slow is supposed to stop so that so it accesses your feelings and your emotions and allows you to articulate that. Now your slow songs today are only about sexing the females and hating the men. I consider that to be 10 times more dangerous than quote unquote gangster rap. At least that gets straight to the point. This other one is way more insidious. Look it up. This other one is way more deceptive in how it bypasses your mental and emotional defenses. It slowed you down and you're prepared for a quote love song, but they're not actually talking about love. Did you get that? Historically speaking, the slow songs are supposed to be talking about love, but this is not a love song. This is a hate song masquerading as a love song is what it's doing. Masquerading is that. That's the point I want you to understand and get. That's warfare. That's warfare. And I consider this to be way more dangerous. How many of you knew that? By the way, in the chat room, anyone who's mentioned Usher or the Super Bowl, ban them. We're having lesson here tonight, so anybody who wants to try to do that, ban them. Don't time them out, ban them. Now you can go watch whatever you want. I want you all to understand that this is how they've hijacked it and taken it over. This is how they destroy your mind and your culture from the inside out. That when it's time for you to sit down with your woman or your man, that the music is supposed to aid you in that process. You don't need drugs. The music is supposed to aid you in that process. And then you take a look and see what they've done. They've waited until you've let your defenses down. You let your defenses down, and then next thing you know, it's like, thank you for lowering your defenses. Now let me program you. So you wonder, I'm just going to tell you, you wonder why so much of the so-called sex people have today is so hateful and adversarial. Have you all considered that? Some of your favorite sex songs, love songs, slow songs are actually angry, hostile, dysfunctional. Well, and then you take a look at people's sex today, the outrageous rate of STDs, bastard kids, divorces, breakups, violent females torching your car and killing folk, the abortion rate out of control because children are the result of sexual contact. Wow, you see this sharp spike in all these negative things surrounding intimate contact, which runs parallel to the change in the music. Yeah, because your favorite slow song is probably talking about how no good the man is. So when you do have intimate time with someone, that's already programmed you. It's already programmed. For those of you who are stupid enough, or your parents were stupid enough to have you listen to R. Kelly, most of his music was like that, especially once you get past the second album, although God help you if you got to the second album. Once you get past the second album, that's a wrap. The Ronald Isley stuff and stuff. Hey, Mr. Biz, how you doing, Mr. Biz? What the hell's going on? In the Closet. There was nothing positive about that. There was nothing good about that. That was like the blues music during a depression. There was nothing positive about it. That was not a relationship that was constructive. That music was not nurturing constructive relationships. That music was teaching you and priming you to have a bunch of crazy sex and then start fighting. But that's not what they do over there on the other side. Y'all can talk about Taylor Swift all you want to. Taylor Swift's music isn't telling the young white girls how no good the white dudes are. What? But it's true. Tay ain't over there doing that. They're not over there teaching their children that about them. Now, over here on your side, they go grab some dysfunctional hoes and sluts and give them a record deal. And all right, get in the studio and have at it. They get the white kids out there. Oh, they don't do that. Oh, no. We don't talk like that over here. Oh, that music won't sell over here. That sells on your side of the fence. But Jason, don't be a dumbass. But Jason, don't be an idiot. Don't say it's stupid.
You always name calling us here. I'm gonna talk anyway. Let me talk. The white folk love buying our music.
Let me get the Pepto. I once again remind you that Brother Neely Fuller instructed us and encapsulated it perfectly. They don't adopt our music, they play with it. Just like they can hop into bed with you and literally have sex with you, and then when they get out the bed, they are not confused. They can listen to rap music and not be confused. They can join your street gangs and not be confused. They can lay up and have triple X rated, quadruple, wild, crazy, monkey swinging, toaster strudel sex with you and not get out of that bed confused. You're the one confused. You think because the audience, the majority of the audience who shows up for Bad Boy Records or Lil Wayne concerts is white, you think that means they see your music the way you do. No, they don't. They're coming there to play with it. They're coming there to be amused by it because that's not their experience, it's yours. Now, every time we sit up here and tell them that we don't accept anybody trying to carpetbag their way into our music, they try to tell you that this is America's music, and yet then when you try to talk about the culture, they tell you, oh, I can't identify with that. That's not my experience. No, it isn't. And I'm saying keep it that way. I'm not going to play games with it. No, this is not your experience. You came here to be entertained by it the same way that most people are entertained by Italian mafia movies. You're not a member of the Italian mafia. Most of you have seen The Godfather 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, however many they made. Goodfellas, all of Martin Scorsese's gangster movies. You've seen those movies. You ain't never been a mafioso and you've never wanted to spend time around mafiosos, but a bunch of you love your mafia gangster movies. Okay, but when you walked out the theater, you weren't confused. Well, some of you were. But when you walked out the theater, you weren't confused. You didn't think you were Italian. You just liked the movies. You might respect some of the historical figures who were real people. Sound like rap music? It is. You liked the movies. You respected the historical figures, but you were not confused about who you are in that dynamic. You're not confused. So when you talk about them buying our music, showing up at our concerts, diddy bopping and whatnot, yeah, they can listen to that music, and because it's not part of their experience, how it hits them is radically different from how it hits you. Remember, let me give you all a brief historical narrative for those of you who don't remember, the Colombo crime family, I believe it was, when Francis Ford Coppola made the first Godfather movie, the Colombo crime family told him, you can't use the word mafia. The Colombo crime family told Francis Ford Coppola when he made the first Godfather movie, you can't use the word mafia. That's why the word mafia never is said in the Godfather film. I don't know if it was ever said in any of them, but I know it wasn't in the first one. It's a mafia film that talks about the family, never uses the word mafia. Because Colombo told him, you ain't doing that. And for those of you who are not old enough to remember, they had said that there were a bunch of movies they wanted to make that the Italians got shut down. There's a bunch of movies they wanted to make that the Italians got shut down. They told them, yeah, that's a bad look for us. Hell, if you'll all remember The Sopranos, when HBO wanted to make The Sopranos, you had Italian political figures who were criticizing HBO for wanting to make the Sopranos. Italian people didn't look on that favorably. They didn't look on The Godfather favorably. They didn't look on The Sopranos favorably. Even if there were realistic parallels, they still didn't look on that favorably. Now, you sitting up here talking about how much you love Tony Soprano. Them folk didn't see it the way you did. So I want you to understand there's real world parallels here between them and us and our experience. And I want you to understand the way that you see this and how they see you when you look at it. Well, guess what? That's how we see them when they look at this and when we look at them. These are our experiences. And if folks just sit up here and commercialize it, there's the good and the bad, but it's ours. There is the good and the bad, but it belongs to us. If other folk get a hold of it here, they separated you from it, and now you are the worst thing that a people can possibly be. You are culturally bankrupt. Culturally bankrupt. And it is critical that that not happen. You cannot let that occur because people who are culturally bankrupt have nothing to pass on. And if you have nothing to pass on, you have no reason for existing. You can be abused, brutalized, wiped out and exterminated, and no one noticed. If you can kill the culture, you can annihilate the people without even a whimper. I want to take a few moments here tonight to remind you. I want to take just a few moments to remind you. If what you were doing back then hadn't been illegal, how rich would you be today?
My God, I probably would be the richest man in the country. I probably would be richer than Jeff Bezos.
Why are black people the poorest people in the world?
Well, for the first thing that I would start off with is that we are the only people that ever came over here in handcuffs.
So how do we deal with that?
We got to break those chains off our minds. My goal in life is to demonstrate that the same skills that I use in the drug business, had I been taught by somebody else instead of a drug dealer, that I could have did anything.
We're going to take a very brief commercial, non-commercial break. When we come back, we're going to be addressing this and other things here. Before we do, I want to thank everyone, and I do mean everybody who has contributed to support tonight's program on PayPal, Venmo. Thank you very much to my man, Mr. Richburg. Thank you very much for your support, brother, as always. Big shout out here to Mr. Walter, Andrew L., and everyone else here who supports tonight's program on PayPal, Venmo. Thank you very much for your support. We're going to take a very brief commercial, non-commercial break. When we come back, we're going to discuss Kanye, Cat Williams, and how generational wealth is weaponized against us. You're not going to want to miss that. This is The Black Channel.
Hello, my name is Steve Burgess, and I'm the author of this book, Guidelines for the Successful Student, a closer look at parenting your school-aged child. In this book, I've explained the role of the parent and the student in addition to what accommodations, procedures, rewards and consequences and expectations that need to be in place to ensure student success from primary to high school. This book is available on Amazon.com. For more information, please visit my link tree at Easy One-on-One, and to access my latest podcast, A Teaching Moment with Mr. B. Thank you all for listening.
A white supremacist assassin seeks revenge. Corrupt FBI agents with evil intentions. Dangerous black collaborators dedicated to treason. Occam Jeffers must defeat them all and somehow survive. One misstep and he's a dead man. Join Occam Jeffers as he looks the devil in his blue eyes and tells him, Black first. A sequel to the underground hit War of the Heart, Spirit of 1811 Publishing presents God Love Us, on sale at Amazon. Pre-order and save today. Visit spirit-of-1811publishing.com and show your love.
Order yours today to experience all the benefits of Ash Kickin' natural body butter. With skin so smooth and soft, you'll thank us for it. Shop Ash Kickin' online. That's ASHKICKIN.com.
Hi, this is Brenda Starr, creator of Poetry with a Purpose and author of the book Pressed But Not Crushed. Pressed But Not Crushed is an anthology of political poems that address current and historical issues in American descendants of slave population and African American population. The book describes slaveries and its residuals, Jim Crow segregation, social depredation, and other relevant issues to American descendants of slaves and African Americans, including the current political climate that does not address our issues.
If you know, you know. It's time to wake up. Welcome back to the Black Channel. I am your host, your brother, your humble servant, the Black Authority. Very glad to be with you all the evening. And I wanted to discuss a couple of things here in particular. Now, you know, we're talking tonight about generational wealth and how it's weaponized against us. And when somebody weaponizes something against you, you got to go on the offensive. Now, one of the great things, not good things, great things that happened as a result of the pandemic is the world had to do without some things. And when we had to do without something, hell, we are experts at doing without. So we take a little and make it monumental. And next thing you know, you had verses. We didn't have to do anything new. We made playing music into an international phenomenon that is playing our music into an international phenomenon. You see, that's what happens when you value what you have, when you are first in line to value what you have. Amazing things can happen. One of the amazing things here in particular, I wanted to show you from the Dallas Observer. Now, this article is actually about a month old here, but there's a reason why I'm bringing it up. This article is about a month old, but there's actually something in it to be said here, especially in light of what we've seen here recently. They got Monique, my man Shannon Sharp over there. Like I say, you know, I've had my criticism of Shannon, but I got to take my hat off to him. He's really turned into a viable media platform. If he keeps this up, he's going to be extremely viable. So we'll see how it goes. Well played so far. Well played so far. He had Monique on, and now Monique is joining Cat Williams on his Dark Matter tour. And boy, oh boy. Now, I want you all to understand this article is from July 15th, so it hasn't been a whole month yet, but almost a month ago. And they were talking about here that Cat Williams shows were selling out in Texas. They weren't just hitting, they were selling out. It's been selling out in several cities. Okay, so let me get this straight. This is without some major media conglomerate backing you. This is simply off the strength of showing up on Shannon Sharp's YouTube channel and then getting out there and doing what you do. This is simply off the strength of that. Something that these folks can't shut down and can't control. So you saw what happened with Dave Chappelle. You saw what happened with Chris Rock. And you got Cat, who set up here and has found a way to be able to do that on his own without the usual gatekeepers. I want you to keep that in mind. This is not me saying that his shows have been selling out. This is the media saying, oh yeah, by the way, his shows have been selling out. By the way, big things been happening. And by the way, we gonna have to jump in there and squash him like a bug because he didn't come through the proper channels. We can't control him. If he's doing it like this, that means he's doing too much. He making too much. He's getting it on his own. You mean that we ain't gonna control this so he can get a bag that big by himself? Oh, that's a problem. That is a big problem. You can't allow that to occur. See, he's supposed to have to come through you to make this kind of thing happen. They're supposed to have to come through you. They're going to have to come through you if you're going to make that happen. That's a hell of a situation to be in. That's a hell of a situation to be in when you're taking that many L's like that. But when we value what we do, when we value our talent, when we value the money from it, the money which is simply the affirmation of what we've done, when we value that, this is what you end up with. Everything is about preventing us from getting to a point where you can generate them figures yourself. Everything is about preventing that. Yeah. We know about Netflix. The real thing is they ain't come calling if you can't call hands on your own. And the big thing here is he gets to do that from a position of strength, which they usually don't get to do. They usually don't get to do that. No, he ain't did nothing like this before. Please put the crack pipe down. Please put it down. You don't sit up here and go say what you said on Shannon Sharp's place. It blows up like it did, and then the result is still overwhelmingly positive. He's supposed to be blacklisted. Steve Harvey and Kevin Hart supposed to put in the phone call. Because that's what happens to everybody else. Steve Harvey and Kevin Hart supposed to sit back, smile, and dial, make that phone call, and then all the doors are supposed to lock on you. Some folks are so desperate to get attention, you're not using any cognitive critical thinking skills. Sit back, smoke your weed, listen and learn and get gamed up. What's everybody's complaint been about? You can't get a TV special. You can't get a network TV show. You can't get a concert. Hell, ain't Kanye West out there right now complaining and yelling that he can't get concert venues? Remember? Isn't Kanye yelling and screaming about that right now? He was putting out an album and he's like, hey, they telling folks don't rent the arena to me. They're telling folks don't let me perform. They won't let me perform. I can fill up the arena, but they won't give me. Now they're telling me it's not enough that I gotta make my own clothes, make my own album. Now I gotta make my own arena? Who am I supposed to be? Travis Scott? By the way, yes, for those of you who did not know, yeah, that's Kanye West and his new woman promoting his new album. Some folks don't learn. But in any case, no, the gatekeeper's supposed to make a phone call because that's all they got to do is make a phone call, punch a few digits, and all the doors are supposed to lock on you. Don't give a damn how quote unquote talented you are. The way they commit warfare is they economically and financially starve you. So it doesn't matter how talented you are, how capable you are, how able you are. You can be the funniest comedian, the fastest football player, the fastest track star, the highest jumpingest basketball star, and it won't matter if they've locked all the doors. You are invisible. You're invisible when they lock all the doors. That's the whole point of this. And Cat, the point that he was trying to make that I think got lost in everything here was that, by the way, these other folks are put into their positions. What he said about Kevin Hart, he's a plant, but he didn't get to really go into the folks who planted them there. It's like, okay, they put these people there so they can serve a specific purpose, and their job is to make sure, okay, they benefit the folks who put them there, and everybody else, talent to the side, gets locked out. So you can just sit there with folks talking about, man, you show is the funniest comedian. You a lot funnier than these other folks. And meanwhile, you can't get in the door. Folks, I want y'all to understand that's a dirty ass game they play. Let me explain to you how this works, even at the highest levels here. And I know you hate it. Some of y'all hate it. Some of y'all love it. We're going to do it anyway because this is what the hell we do. If you all remember a few years ago when AEW, All Elite Wrestling, owned by the son of the guy who owns the Jacksonville Jaguars. So he's a billionaire, and he better be, because he gave his son the money to start AEW. They're going to go up against Vince McMahon. If you'll remember, Madison Square Garden Vince McMahon made a phone call to Madison Square Garden and told them not to rent the venue to AEW. For those of you who don't remember, we covered this before. Vince McMahon told them, oh, if we're going to be in Madison Square Garden, you can't let AEW up in Madison Square Garden. Well, unfortunately for Vince, the Jacksonville Jaguars and the NFL got more clout. So the Khan family made a phone call to their attorney, and their attorney told Madison Square Garden, you going to open it up or else. Then next thing you know, they told Vince McMahon, hey, we going to have to rent it to him. We going to have to rent it to him. We got to let it go. We got to rent it to him. Now, that's what they did to the family that owns the Jacksonville Jaguars. That's the type of tactics they'll try to use against people who got money. Hell, got more money than Vince McMahon had. That's what you see they do to folks who got that kind of paper already. What the hell you think they gonna do to your black ass? If that's what they would try with these other people, and that's your proof that they lock people out, what do you think they can do to you? What do you think they can do to Kat? What do you think they can do to these other folks here to make sure you don't get promoted, you don't get seen, you don't get publicized, you don't get marketed? You think about the kind of pressure and weight they can bring to bear on somebody who ain't got nothing, doesn't have anywhere near that type of resources to call on. No, talent is not enough. And when you speak out like Kat did, you got to understand he's got credibility, but he got street credibility. He doesn't have corporate credibility. Kat got street credibility. He got the streets behind him. And that's what he's living off of right now is the streets. And the streets are holding it down for him. And that's good. But by the same token, truth be told, we all know it. He should be bigger than Kevin Hart. But it's like, we locked the doors on you. And Kat just was telling the truth. Yeah, I should be bigger than Kevin, but I'm not because them folks over there locked the door. And oh yeah, y'all are right about the dress. He just came, the same thing that we all been saying now for 10, 20 years. Kat came out and said, yeah, y'all are correct about what you're saying about them making the black men wear the dress. Yeah, you're right. That's exactly what they do. Now, for him to say that, no, that's never been done before. For him to say that and still be standing, that ain't never happened before. You've never seen somebody do that and this be the result. And everybody he talked about now is on the back foot. Now all of them are sitting up here saying as much as they can, but they can't take him down. No, you ain't never seen this happen before. What I'm saying is that played correctly, you're looking at the beginning of another renaissance, which means that Kat is going to end up being targeted. He's not going to be targeted right now. They already recognize the streets are too heavy behind him. So what we going to have to do, you're going to have to build him up and boost him up. So now that you can't squash him, you're going to have to play ball, but not play ball the way y'all think. They're going to sit up here and probably give him a couple of specials, this, that, and the other, but they're going to try to come up with a scandal on him. That's what they're going to try to do. Mark my words. Next order of business is you're going to have to try to pin a scandal on him. I don't know whether it'll be drugs. That's usually their go-to, but I don't think that one's going to float. Don't know if it's going to be a female in some sexual assault charge. Don't know if it's going to be some drug deal gone bad. Don't know what exactly it'll be, but mark my words, they're going to try to pin something on him. Get his name up, get his publicity up, get all that up now. Since you couldn't squish him, get him up a little bit bigger so that now you can make an example of him. You're going to have some former assistant or something jump out here and make some allegation. I don't know what it'll be. I just know, Kat, they coming. They coming. You did too much. You got too big. They couldn't take you down. The usual takedown thing didn't happen. Oh, they coming now. They're going to wait. Now, they're not going to do this immediately. They're going to wait. They're going to wait. They're going to wait, and somebody going to say something. It may not even be true. They may just make up something. But yeah, can you let that stand? Can you let that stand? And the corporations who'll be doing it, that's the white generational wealth. That if they pump you up, it's only because they either control you or they've already figured out a way to knock you down. And that's the instrument that they use. Recognize when these folks do that. Recognize that this is our cultural legacy. Because they would love to knock off Cat Williams and then replace him with Andrew Schultz. I said it. By the way, who's his daddy? By the way, I'm just curious. I'm just curious here. Just curious. I'll leave that alone. I'll leave that alone. They have a reason for doing those things. They have a reason for doing those things. Your kid's supposed to be sitting out here with all the damn talent in the world and be struggling. And every time they liquidate the wealth, you end up starting over from zero. You end up starting over from zero. And when we start over from zero, the rest of these folks are getting bigger. They end up getting bigger, and then your sons and daughters are ending up here having to go toe-to-toe and slug it out with whole mountains. They're having to go slug it out with mountains. But they're going to make sure that their kids are put in position. So you sit up here and you go build this thing up, and the next thing you know, they swoop you to the side. And then they go off and go find some cornball ass somewhere, or grab some Amy Schumer and tell you, okay, this is your next one here. Let me explain something to y'all right now. When it comes to comedy, you are not a great or noteworthy comedian unless or until you have a classic bit. You're supposed to have a bit. You're supposed to have something that you've done. You're supposed to have a specific joke you've told that when you start telling that joke, half the people in the room know what that joke is, that you have a classic bit that everybody identifies with. That's what you're supposed to have. And if you don't have that, you can't really call yourself a noteworthy comedian. I challenge anybody to tell me one of Amy Schumer's classic bits. Name a noteworthy bit from Amy Schumer. I'll wait. No, I won't. Name one from Andrew Schultz. I won't even bother pretending to wait for that one. Yeah, there's a line you can say from these people. Bernie Mac, I ain't scared of you. T.K. Kirkland, who raised you? Cat Williams is pimping. And they got classic bits that they do. Bernie Mac about the kids. They got classic bits that they've done. Bill Cosby about the babies and the kids. They got classic bits they've done. These other folk ain't got that, but they're getting stuck in place. And my point is, how the hell do you have a Netflix special and nobody said a damn thing about the Netflix special? Nobody is talking about the jokes you told. They talked about the jokes that Dave Chappelle said on his Netflix specials. Remember that? Hell, they tried to make a scandal of it not once but twice. Remember? Amy Schumer came and, they paid her big money for an irrelevant special. Amy Schumer got paid big money. HBO and Netflix paying folks big money for irrelevant ass specials. Jumped up there, said what she had to say. Ain't nobody ever, invoked any of her jokes. Nobody's ever done a recall of any of those jokes. Nobody's ever reminded you. Nobody said, hey, this was a classic bit from Amy Schumer. Ain't nobody ever did that. And you've never done it for Andrew Schultz, and you ain't gonna do it. You can do that with these other people. You can't do that with them. That's why I'm bringing that up to tell you that's talent. That is talent. That's how you know you got the goods. I dare you to show me an Amy Schumer interview where everybody in the studio was laughing legitimately. You bring in Kat and these other folks, people gonna be falling on the floor laughing. Now, how the hell can that happen? How can you put these two people together? How can you put them on the same stage together, making the same damn money? And one of them, when her special is gone, she slithers off and nobody mentions her again. Meanwhile, you talking about these other folks decades later. This is why, and I'm bringing this up because this is going to be a critical point here. This is why we going to have to start building these things ourselves, get the momentum and the publicity ourselves. So my hat is off to Kat. You're going to have to get it yourself, but after you get it, you're going to have to control it. The whole reason we become vulnerable, every generation, we're vulnerable all over again. What do we control? One person gets it and then sells it off. Berry Gordy sells Motown. Jay-Z dumps Rockefeller. Every time you turn around. P. Diddy and Bad Boy. I mean, it's essentially defunct. We're going to have to build these things, and then once you build it up, you're going to have to hold it. And when I say build it, oh, I'm going to get in trouble tonight. When I say build it, I don't mean the Tyler Perry way of building it either. What? I meant what I said, not the Tyler Perry way either, because Cat Williams, the other point that Cat made, I'm discussing generational wealth being weaponized. People, keep up with me. I'm discussing generational wealth being weaponized. The thing that Cat Williams said was that I always roll with comedians who are funnier than me. In other words, he has no problem getting out there and promoting other people and creating synergy. Tyler Perry ain't never put nobody on. Oh, wait a minute. Jason Black said that over a decade ago. Cat Williams said that last month. Jason Black been beating the drum about the fact that nobody's ever got put on from a Tyler Perry movie except Tyler Perry. If you were famous in a Tyler Perry movie, you were famous before you got there. Ain't that right, Jenny Jackson? But if you were a nobody before Tyler Perry, you gonna be a nobody after you're in his movie. Now that is essentially unheard of in Hollywood. Unheard of except with him. Now, how the hell is it that you have a director who can make multi-million-dollar film after multi-million-dollar film after multi-million-dollar film, franchise film after franchise film, and ain't nobody in those films ever jumped off to become a star except him? Spike Lee directed his films and made stars of Wesley Snipes, stars of Samuel L. Jackson, stars of Halle Berry, stars of Denzel Washington. Tyler Perry, 20 damn years later, we ain't seen the first one jump off yet. But those studios keep giving him money. But they keep giving him money. Now he keeps getting the money and he makes sure that nobody else benefits from it except the white studios that gave him the money. Ain't nobody else getting built. How the hell can that be? How can you make movies for decades? Could you all imagine James Cameron making movies for 30 years and nobody in those films ever became a star? Quentin Tarantino making movies for 20 years. Nobody in those movies ever became a star after that. Martin Scorsese making movies for 40 years and nobody became a star. None of them. How can you have somebody been making movies for 10, 20 damn years, however long you've been doing it, and not one person who's entered his films ever had a career jump off after that? Now, if that's not gatekeeping, somebody tell me who is. Don't worry, boss. We're going to make these movies. It's going to milk the Negro market. But don't worry, none of the niggas who get my films are going to be able to use that as a springboard to go nowhere. You all let Michael B. Jordan through. Y'all chose him and selected him. I'm not saying he doesn't have talent, but just keeping it on the bricks. You chose and selected him, and so he gets to be the one Negro you let through, but everybody else gets a stop sign. So don't worry, we'll make these films and we'll get that Negro money, but ain't nobody in this film gonna be able to jump off and get ahead of us and become a star on their own. That is called gatekeeping. Oh, am I about to go further? I damn sure am. By the way, doesn't that sound curiously familiar to what happens to everybody who's worked with Kevin Hart, by the way? Damn. Oh, I'm sorry. Do I need to take a moment to remind you that, by the way, I think I see a similarity? By the way, I'm just asking myself, how many people who have worked with Kevin Hart became stars who were not already stars? Oh, I'm sorry. I guess you didn't make him a star then. Yeah, how many folks work with Kevin and they springboarded off of that? Hey, how many folk with Steve Harvey who didn't already put themselves on? Pay attention. Some of the ADHD kids are going to trip over their shoelaces. By the way, all the folks who work with Steve Harvey, and I'm just asking myself, by the way, how many of them got on who were not already famous? Oh, then they didn't get on. They already put themselves on. So he got to collaborate with you. But by the way, somebody who wasn't already on. ADHD kids, somebody who wasn't already on. Some of the crack pipe babies, what does already mean? When we talk about gatekeepers, all these other folk here, you supposed to have synergy. If you really that big of a name, how the hell is it you can be in film after film, show after show, and there are no new people getting on, they got proximity to you and nobody's coming up? Nobody coming up. Nobody. The folk that you just named there, Steve Harvey, Kevin Hart, man, shouldn't they, let's stop the bull jive, shouldn't they have a squad of people behind them? Because Jerry Seinfeld built a squad around him. With Michael Richards calling us nigga, nigga, nigga. By the way, need I remind you, the white folk build a squad around them. One of them come up and then they start boosting other people. You come over here and ain't nobody getting raised up. If they get it, they got to go get it on their own. But how the hell can you have that kind of proximity to these two men? They're all over the damn place and nobody's getting a lift? Nobody. No, that's called gatekeeping. That's what that's called. That's called gatekeeping. Somebody in the chat room talking about Tiffany Haddish. Let me just keep it real about Tiffany. No hate, no shade. Tiffany Haddish claim to fame was not her comedy, remember? Tiffany Haddish did not become known because of her comedy. She became known because they said she's good looking. They kept talking about she cute, she fine, she this, that, and the other. They were not talking about her comedy. They were talking about her. They weren't talking about her comedy. And I'm not saying that she's not funny. I'm just saying, hey, let's remember now, when she got her boost from folks talking about the way she looks, whether she's your cup of tea in the looks department or not, that's what they were saying about her. They were talking about her being a sexy female comedian, not about being a funny one. And guess what? That became her Achilles tendon. Because nobody was talking about your jokes. They were talking about you. So the first time you got arrested, they weren't reminiscing to your jokes. They were talking about you. That's how gatekeeping works. They can shut you down at a second's notice. 1 minute they talk about you everywhere and having and hee-hawing and laughing. Next minute, bam, you're on the side of a milk carton. Never seen you. Don't mention you again. And what I'm saying is that we have to value what we do. We have to value this because there is a non-stop, unimpeded, continuous, relentless generational war against us. They are holding grudges. They're remembering this. This is you know why we say we need to have reparations? You know why we say you got to cut the check? You know why we ain't sitting up here letting nobody tell us that was a long time ago? Michael Jackson getting that catalog was a long time ago. And Billboard and the rest of these other magazines and websites have never forgiven him for it. Not because he did something wrong, not because he did something evil, but because he didn't fail. These people are targeting us and hating us because we're not failing in this system. This is how serious it is. This is generational hate that's following us across the decades and truthfully across the centuries. So if we're going to respond to it, we got to respond to it generationally because you all understand if they didn't get Michael, they were coming for his kids. If they didn't get the kids, they coming for the grandkids. Don't worry, if you don't sell, we'll get your kids. And if your kids don't sell, we'll get the grandkids. Eventually, somebody gonna drop it off. If your family does not create a dynasty and an institution of it, because you're going up against white dynasties and white institutions. Now white and Asian. They're coming after you across generations. Generational wealth is generational warfare. Generational wealth is generational warfare. And I'm pointing out Michael Jackson because most of you witnessed what they did to him in your lifetime. He was the biggest thing on planet Earth. And then immediately they started saying he had mental and emotional problems. When that didn't kill his shine, they said, oh, he's a pedophile. And they tried to work that damn angle forever until the people got behind him and they realized they ain't gonna work. And then eventually he gets removed with the help of Dr. Conrad. And oh, what do you know? Prince goes under similar circumstances. This is how seriously they take that. Now, I want you all to understand that I'm very, very glad and very, very proud of the success that we've seen and whatnot. But I want you to understand that the ball is in your court now. Maybe Michael didn't do everything right. Maybe Michael didn't do everything he should have. Maybe Kanye isn't doing everything right. Maybe Kanye's not doing everything he should have. I understand that. I get that. I want you to understand one more thing. These are just men. They're not gods. They're not supernatural beings. Joe Jackson was a man. Matthew Knowles is a man. These are human beings who made a goal and then got down to doing it. And in their case, they used generational warfare. Joe couldn't get what was rightfully his. Matthew couldn't get what was rightfully his, but they worked. They still kept up working as hard as they could. And even though you would edge them out of having contention to get the title, they passed on what they learned and what they gained and what they accumulated to their children. And the children went to the promised land. And there are a number of you sitting here tonight, and I don't give a damn that nobody knows who you are. Nobody's heard who you are. Nobody's aware of who you are. What I'm telling you is that the earth is yours if you'll take it. And maybe Michael and them didn't do everything that they should have, but there's no reason you can't. There was no Beyonce Knowles until Matthew Knowles built it. There was no Beyonce Knowles until Matthew Knowles said there will be one. Before then, it was just Michael. You never thought you'd see anything like it again. Here comes Beyonce. And that wouldn't have been there if her father had not made the decision. There's no reason that someone listening to me right now in this audience tonight, there's no reason that you can't make the same decision. There's no reason you can't. There's no reason that you can't make that decision and say, you know what, whether Cat Williams does the right thing or not, and by right, I mean handles it correctly, or if they throw stumbling blocks, whether Cat Williams makes it or not, there's no reason that you can't sit there and say, you know what, I'm going for it. And if I don't make it, the kids are going for it. There's no reason that it can't be built by you. And even if you do not get to execute it, there's no reason that it can't be a part of the damn plan. Everybody else on earth has a 100-year plan. Black folk trying to figure out how to have a weekend plan. Even if you don't become the mogul, there's no reason your children cannot, and there's no reason your children should not. We must get over the disease of ego starvation. That if I can't have it, it ain't worth building, it ain't worth doing. Maybe it isn't yours to have, maybe it is yours to build. Have you considered that? Maybe it is not yours to have, maybe it is your children's to have, and it is yours to build. Have you considered that? We can go down the list in the chat room. They're talking about Richard Williams, Floyd Mayweather Sr. Maybe it is not yours to have. Maybe it is the children's to have, and it is yours to build. You see, that is what you do when you don't have an ego. That's also what you can do when you are not envious of your children. The parents of the Wayans. The Wayans parents were not envious of their children. We can go down the list of black excellence all damn night. We ain't gonna do it, but we could. When you are not envious of your children, you have no problem whatsoever building up connections, building up resources, building up assets, and then bring your children in. That's what everybody else does. Donald Trump became president of the United States because his swindling, crooked father went around grabbing real estate by hook or by crook. Joe Kennedy didn't get to go to the White House. No, he was the bootlegger who built the fortune and sent his sons to the White House. Everybody else understands this. Everyone else gets this. There's a bunch of you in here right now. You got the ability to do it. You haven't been doing it because you're trying to figure out how to get you on. And in the process, you become your own personal Tyler Perry. Your children can't get on because you trying to figure out how to get your damn cell phone, and you're too old, too fat, too ugly, too raggedy. Jason, did you just say all that? I damn sure did.
And deal with it, nigga.
And it's true. Give it up, Johnny. You ain't gonna be a 50-year-old rapper. You need to be putting that investment in your 20-year-old son. Give it up, Shintikia. You ain't never gonna get that modeling deal. You need to be focused at your 45 damn years old. You need to be focusing on your 18-year-old daughter. Or for some of you, your 18-year-old granddaughter. You need to be focusing on her. It's not yours to have. It is yours to give and yours to build. It's not yours to have. And you should not be hateful and envious and spiteful of your own children. Michael Jackson got where he is because his father demanded greatness of his son. He wasn't envious of his son. He pushed his son. He pushed his daughters, but he didn't envy them. And they changed the world as a result. There's no reason you can't do the same. So if our current crop of stars and icons and entertainers ain't getting the job done, there's no reason that you can't get to work to make it happen. No reason whatsoever. None. None. We aren't interested in generational wealth, but the people who hate us are practicing generational warfare. So you better start responding in kind. We're going to go ahead and wrap things up here tonight. I want to thank everyone who has contributed to support tonight's program on PayPal, Venmo, Jerome, Tom, DeAndre, everyone else here. Thank you very much for your support. If you are new here to the Black Channel, welcome to the Haven of Intelligent Black Thought. We do this every weekend. Click that red subscribe button. Click that yellow notification bell. Join us each and every time that we are here. If you haven't been to our website, blackchannelfilms.com, you want to go and check out our groundbreaking, best-selling documentary work, 7 a.m., Gentrified, Race War, all available on DVD and streaming. Go to blackchannelfilms.com. That is blackchannelfilms.com. I want to thank all of you for tuning in to tonight's program. Thank you for watching, subscribing, and sharing. And this concludes this broadcast of the Black Channel. I am your host, your brother, your humble servant, the Black Authority. And until next time, my brothers and my sisters from around the world, remember, black is the future, and the future is generational.